大家好，大家晚安，可以看到我吗？可以的话打个一好吗？诶，大家都有看到我吼，大家都有听到我声音，好，谢谢雨丽，好，谢谢淑范好，那很欢迎大家又再度回到我们下三刀的课程。今天天气突然变冷了，不知道大家有没有突然被冷到，要注意保暖哦。好，那就让我们欢迎 Batra 老师为我们继续接下来的课程。So, welcome, Batra. Thank you for coming back to our class. Would you like to start with the Q&A today?
Yeah, we can do that. And also I just saw this message about Denzo.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so just to clarify, what would you like me to talk about Denzo?
Oh, because you recently returned there, so if there's any interesting, new scriptures that we are scanning, you can share with us or anything about Lama Gongor and his team, if that
Oh, I
would be
see. Okay.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. So just briefly, yes, Travis and I went to Denzo together this time. And we also take care of this some of the uh, you know, computers and scanners, some of these project um, tools.
Mm-hmm,
And then also we set up a Starlink.
mm-hmm,
So it's very convenient now. So before then, they didn't have this fast internet. And
mm,
then Travis had such a hard time to
mm-hmm,
communicate from America. And then what he did was at night, he tries to connect to the computers in Erdenzo.
mm-hmm.
And if it's something, he needs to fix, and that's the time he had to fix, or,
Oh,
sometimes download the data, and etc. But with
okay.
this slow internet, he had such a hard time. But
Mm-hmm,
finally, we set up Starlink. It's very nice, actually, so fast.
okay.
They don't rely on any kind of internet provider now. Directly connect to Starlink,
Mm,
the satellite. So it was very convenient in terms of um, the project. And also, it was nice to see the progress there. And Lama Vongo reported us that he scanned most of the smaller format texts.
mm-hmm,
And now he needs to scan the longer format texts, but they have only one scanner for that.
mm-hmm.
And it's slow. And even one scanner is not enough, especially that scanner, because it also needs a long leg to capture longer format texts. But he doesn't have that. So he was kind of, oh, I wish I had this better scanner because the National Library also has a project, and the project is, of course, bigger, and they have better facility and the better instruments. And then that was the only shortage for Lamagonga, but he's still so very enthusiastic, working on the texts. And just to add a little bit, in the month of September, I haven't looked into the October texts yet, but in September texts, he or the project mostly worked on Buddhist texts of exorcism,
Mm,
Buddhist
okay.
exorcism. It was quite
Mm-hmm,
interesting to see
mm,
those texts, and
mm,
some of our ritual texts, there are some kind of explanations. There were kind of few images in there. It was quite interesting. So that's
mm.
basically what I saw in September. And overall, it was very nice to see the progress, and the monks are still very active working on it, and they kind of look happy. We had the pizza day with all the monks eating pizza and stuff. It was really great.
OK，好，那再次欢迎大家回到这里哦。那如果说你认识有朋友他是有报这堂课的，今天还没上来的话，可以在群组里面或者是私讯去邀请他们赶快上来哦。那么刚刚巴 a 老师跟我分享的，就是因为老师他是我们 ALL 亚洲经典传承图书馆的蒙古专案的顾问，因此每次我们有美国的工作人员要前往的时候，老师都会去当翻译。那这一次9月份呢，老师就跟我们美国的技术人员叫做 Travis 一同前往光显寺。那有跟我们一起去过蒙古的朋友就知道，光显寺它离乌兰巴托很远哦，要单程就要6个半小时，差不多就是台北到屏东那么远的距离。然后呢，老师他们就到了光显寺去之后，就看到他们主要去就是会带一些新的设备，譬如说这次他们就帮光显寺带新的扫描器材过去，然后还有一些新的设备帮他们做更新哦。因为其实像他们在做扫描跟经典保存的工作，因为每天都在做，所以那个设备有的时候里面的一些零件需要更换是很快速的。然后这一次最重要的突破就是网路，他们应该是帮我这寺院装了类似光纤网路，就是很快的网路。那因为以前的网路非常非常慢，所以呢，美国的工作人员以前工作就进行的很慢，因为事实上他们在现场扫描的话，美国的工程师都要连到寺院的网路，然后还有进去他们的电脑下载备份。然后要去查一些资料，或者是说看有没有什么地方有问题。但是因为以前的寺院的网络太慢了，所以每次美国的那个工作人员都会做得很辛苦。那这次他们主要去就是帮蒙古的光显寺更新了网络设备，所以现在网络很快，然后他们扫描的工作，还有就是在后台下载备份的工作就会更快的可以进行。那另外一个部分是老师说，在光显示呢，就是大家知道，就是我们的经典其实有小本的，就是大概这么大本的，也有很大本的，就是长可能就35公分啊，然后宽25公分那么大本的。所以目前光显示已经把小本的经典都扫完了，现在要扫大本的。可是可以扫大本的话，那个机器也一定要比较大台。那目前的话只有一台哦，因为光显示它是一个比较新的计划，不像蒙古国家图书馆已经进行很久了，然后他们人力也比较充足，所以蒙古国家图书馆的设备很多。那光显示目前是用一台扫描器开始在扫这些比较大的古籍那就是虽然只有一台，可是当地的负责人，也就是大家刚刚在进场的时候看到画面上的拉玛宫格，其实呢，他也是非常的充满着热情在做他的工作。那老师说，他每一个月都会就是连线进去看一下最近扫描的主题是什么。然后老师刚刚说，在9月份呢，光显示已经扫描的佛教的书籍，大部分都是跟驱魔或是驱邪有关的。然后他觉得这个主题很有趣，那上面也会有一些图片。然后因为其实僧人他们平常工作都很辛苦嘛，那有时候也要联络一下感情，因为毕竟这是一个团队合作的工作。所以呢，老师跟这个美国的技术人员叫 Travis，跟这些僧人大家就一起订披萨来吃，然后就是促进一下交流。那目前就是老师去9月份去看到的，就是这些最新的消息。那因为大家也都有一起在支持我们 ALL 经典扫描的工作，所以想要把这些进度跟大家做分享。Thank you, Batra.
Mhm. And I also would like to thank you all, actually. I know there are many dedicated Taiwanese people sponsoring this project, and without their help, it's unimaginable. work them, and also kind of it's very beneficial because not only we preserving the texts for the people like me, scholars or practitioners, also the monks are actually learning new skills. They're not necessarily trained in modern technologies,
Mhm,
uh, but many monks are because they're rotating shifts. So
mhm,
basically, all the monks at Erzinzo are
mhm,
engaged in this project and they're learning new skills. And that regard is really, helpful back and forth. And I really appreciate that. And I thank you for those who support uh, this project. It's a tremendous help. And then I'm very happy with that.
嗯。那老师也想要讲说，因为他知道来上这一堂课的人都是有赞助Air 经典扫描跟保存的计划的，所以他想要再次亲自的谢谢各位的付出哦，因为有大家的付出，那经典才可以被扫描，而且他觉得经典被扫描之后，不只是像老师这样子的研究学者。或者是有在修行的人都可以得到帮助，其实这些寺院的僧人，他们也有学习，他们也有收获，因为基本上在寺院里面是没有机会接触到新的科技、新的技术的。可是因为大家就是我们的善款，台湾这边的善款帮助到这些人，去做这些工作，他们就可以被培训，他们的对于现代科技的技术就可以，就是认识就可以增加。那也因为他们的寺院有20几个僧人，那他们其实是轮流让每个人都有机会学习到这样的技能，用这样的新科技的来保存自己的古文献的。那所以老师就是要特别谢谢大家，因为有你们的慷慨，他们才可以做到这么重要的事情。Yeah, people are sending messages in the chat, and some of them say that eating pizza is really lovely. So in the future, if you have pizza picture, please share with us so we can all
Oh yeah, we have
rejoice.
actually pizza pictures actually.
Oh,
Yeah, Chinese too.
okay. So
Yeah,
please share with me afterwards, and I'll post it in our group. I think people will
yeah.
really
It
enjoy
was
it.
nice to gather together and eat pizza. We called it the pizza day. It was a really happy time actually.
嗯，那老师刚刚已经答应我说，他们吃披萨的时候有自拍，所以他会再传照片给我，我在群组里面再跟大家分享哦。然后他们说，他们还特别定了一个披萨日，就是大家要暂时放下工作，然后一起联络感情哦。所以说，就是老师会再跟我分享，我会再跟你们分享。Okay, so would you like to start with our question today?
Yes, let's do that.
好，那再麻烦我们的志工把我们今天的问题 PO 上来。那同时，大家如果在这段时间里面的练习，或者是对老师所讲述过的内容有疑问的话，也都可以在这个时间把它写在聊天室，或直接开麦问老师。OK，所以第一个问题就是说，想要请问，如果已逝的亲友是其他宗教信仰，我想为他祝福，但是对我而言比较有连接感的是佛教的诵经方式，这样对他有帮助吗？或者采取什么方式比较合适呢？Okay, so our first question today is that if my deceased loved ones, they believe in other religion, not Buddhism, and I want to give blessings to that person. But for me, what I can relate more is the Buddhist chanting. But does that help that being? Or what kind of ways will be more appropriate if I want to send good wishes to the deceased one?
Yeah, so obviously whatever is convenient for you, whatever makes sense for you is of course good. Let alone those who believe in other religions, right? The Buddhist prayers for all sentient beings, not only for believers, right? Those sentient beings with no language, no conceptual understanding, no logical reasoning, not even a brain, like basically all sentient beings, even those in hell, right? So
嗯
there's
嗯
no distinction in that regard. There is no distinction between non-believers or non-Buddhists or Buddhists, right? So
嗯
this is something you doing on your end from your part. Uh, whatever is good for you, whatever is appropriate for you should work, I believe, right? Not
嗯
necessarily only Buddhist prayers work, not necessarily the case that the prayers of the religions that the diseased people uh, follow, right? Followed. This is something you doing. So uh, whatever appropriate for you, I think should work.
嗯，好。那老师说，重要的是就是对你来讲方便的，然后你觉得有帮助的都可以哦。因为其实佛教一直强调，我们是关怀所有的有情众生，我们会给所有的有情众生送祝福。那这些众生其实包括那些没有概念的、没有语言的，甚至没有逻辑思考的，甚至是在地狱的众生，我们都会为他们祝福。所以，我们是无分别心的。今天不管对方是佛教徒或非佛教徒都没有关系。那你可以用你在你自己这边觉得合适的，然后你觉得恰当的就好了。
Yeah, so the other day we talked about praying for a cat, right?
嗯
If a prayer works for a cat, then
嗯
there's no question that that prayer would work for non-Buddhists.
嗯嗯嗯嗯。那我们好像有一天上课有讲到说，可以帮自己的猫祈福哦。如果我们可以帮猫祈福的话，那你的亲友，因为毕竟他是一个人，曾经是个人类。那虽然说他是跟你宗教信仰不同的，但是我们的祈福一定也会同样的有效。
Mhm. And of course, the prayer needs to be somewhat genuine from your side, right?
嗯
If the intention is somehow hurt the deceased or the community of the deceased, then it's of course not good thing, you know. Uh,
嗯
by praying, by using Buddhist prayer, you're kind of offending, let's say, a Christian community, then you probably shouldn't do that, right?
嗯。
But from a genuine, intention, then why not? I think everyone would accept that.
还有一个重点就是说，这个在帮他做祈祷回向的时候，要真心诚意的。就是如果我们是真心诚意的帮对方做祝福的话，那应该就不会有问题。但是有一个例外，就是说，假设对方是一个基督教的团体，然后你已经知道这个人或者是那个教会，他们会排斥，就是不喜欢别人用诵经的方式为这个人祈福的话。那当然就不要就是直接的冲突，然后觉得好像这是一个比较适合的方式，所以这点是需要考量进去的。就是说，你的真心诚意，还有你在采取行动的时候，是否会是伤害或是给对方负面的影响，这是要考虑进去的。OK，
You have other
啊、
question?
I don't think so。还有其他的人想要开麦问问题，或者是在聊天室用讯息提问吗？如果没有的话，我们就要开始上今天的课喽。Yeah, I think everybody is good to start the class today.
Okay. So let's see. Let me just do this first. Okay, then share. I think this one is the correct one. Is it all good now?
Yes, it all good, but another question just pop up. Would you
Uh-huh.
like to answer it now?
Sure.
Okay. So if a physician suggests a pregnant mom to take to abort the fetus, is this considered killing?
Uh, Say it again. So,
If a doctor suggests a
suggested.
pregnant woman, yeah,
Uh-huh.
to abort a fetus, is
Yeah.
that considered killing?
Well, yes, of course, action itself is, there's no question, killing is killing, right?
Mm,
But then that's not enough. Action itself is not enough, right? So
mm,
last time we talked about the causal relations of action, right? What would be the
mm,
intention, the causal
mm,
atmosphere, and circumstance of that action,
mm, mm,
and also action itself. In this
mm,
case, killing, of course,
mm,
and also the result of the action. That's also very important. And
mm,
if the result is good, then that's after all, that's probably the most important thing. The result should be good, right?
mm,
But the trick is that sometimes, even though the result is good, sometimes the motivation looks bad and the
mm,
action itself looks bad, right?
mm,
It's also the case vice versa. Like the result is probably bad, but the intention is good and action is good. And sometimes action is bad, but the intention is good and the result is good. So there are like so many different options, right?
mm,
So obviously, uh, generally, if a doctor suggests to abort
mm,
a fetus, then most likely it is the concern of the mother's health, right?
mm,
So, in order to save other sentient beings, then uh, that is probably a necessary um, performance, necessary action one has to do, right? But the question is, of course, one can argue that, well, in order to save someone, killing someone is not good, right? So we also has this kind of dilemma, of course. And
mm,
then other questions kind of other arguments can arise that, well, the mother is already fully functional uh, person who is fully aware of uh, you know the conditions, etc. Whereas the fetus, especially before the fifth month, is probably that person doesn't have this kind of ability, or in some circumstances, people may argue that these fetuses don't, especially in the early days, they don't feel pain, etc. So there are so many different arguments one can raise.
mm,
Uh, but then after all, uh, as we discussed, uh, pragmatism is probably the most important thing. And the argument would be endless, right? One can argue that, well, the mother is kind of already lived 20 or 30 or 40 years, but the fetus has all this potential to live and experience the life of a very long time. So this is also could be a concern, right? But I would say, uh, although it's still a killing, saving mother's life uh, over the fetus is probably a good choice.
mm,
I would,
mm,
but people can have different opinion, of course, on that.
嗯嗯。好，那刚刚提出来的问题是说，如果医师建议把胎儿拿掉，那这样算杀生吗？啊，老师说，我们先从行为来看，是，这是肯定的，这个行为就是杀生。但是呢，就像我们上个礼拜谈到的，就是其实当我们在探讨因果的时候，我们不只要看他的行为，我们还要检视他背后的动机、他的发心。然后还有当时的情况是什么样的情况。然后所以说， 还要把他的采取这个行动之后的后果也考虑进来。那如果说这个结果是一个好的结果，那其实是非常重要。那但是呢，其实有的时候虽然说结果是一个好结果，但是他的动机跟他的行为看起来都会很像是负面的。那有时候则是相反，就是结果是不好，但是行为跟动机是好。所以其实会有很多很多不同的可能性。那回到这一个我们在探讨的问题，就是说，基本上如果医生建议把胎儿拿掉，通常都会是为了要保护妈妈的健康。那为了要拯救另外一个生命，他就必须要杀掉这一个胎儿。所以这因为它是一个好的动机，所以或许这是可以接受的。但是当然，这是有很多讨论的空间呐、有的人会说，诶，那你怎么可以为了救人而杀人呢？这样子不好。那有另外一个人又可以说，诶，可是因为妈妈她已经是一个完整的人类啦，然后她有行为能力，然后她对于痛感一些都有觉察。啊，但是婴儿还没有。那有一些人会说，因为到5个月之前的胎儿都是没有行为的能力，然后早期的胎儿甚至不会有痛觉，所以把他们剁掉是没有关系的。那但是当然，有人也会说，可是这个胎儿如果生出来了，他可以活很久，他有体验人生的机会。但是这个妈妈已经有年纪了，所以其实会有各式各样的讨论。那老师他自己个人的结论就是说，把胎儿拿掉，它就是依然是一种杀生。但是如果医生的考量是为了可以拯救妈妈的生命跟健康的话，那或许这是值得做的。不过各位可以有不同的想法跟意见。
Mhm. So of course, this is a philosophical question. Of course, I can't say that it's okay to save someone sacrificing another. That's not the case, right? If it be the case, then it would be a final result, in order to save, let's say, five different people who has different illnesses, right? One's heart is bad, one's liver is bad, one's kidney is bad, and so forth. And obviously, in this civilized society, we can't just kill someone and then take all these five organs to save
Mhm, mhm,
other five people, right? So of course, it's not
mhm,
good, right? But it's
mhm,
not, this is really a philosophical question. We all know that now it's just happened the presidential election in the States, in the United States. Then this is one of the arguments, right? The women's
mhm,
reproductive rights is one of the
mhm,
arguments between the two parties. So
mhm,
I don't think it's not I don't think it's a settled uh, argument with the one clear final answer.
mhm,
Still, it's the topic of debate. Still, it's the philosophical question.
mhm,
People have different opinions about it.
嗯嗯。那老师说，同学提的这个问题，它其实是一个哲学性的问题，所以他绝对不会说，哦，为了要拯救某一个人，我们就可以杀其他人。因为如果这一个理论是绝对成立的话，那我们可不可以说，现在有5个病人，他们分别需要5个器官，为了要让这5个人得救，我们就杀一个人去救这5个人呢？是不行的，所以我们不能够直接下这样的定论。那比如说，就像最近美国总统大选，大家应该都知道嘛。那其实美国总统大选其中一个两党他们在辩论的议题就是女性的生育权，女性到底能不能自主去堕胎？那这个两方都讨论得很激烈啊，有非常各式各样的论点，但是现在是还没有结论的哦，因为这是一个困难的哲学问题。那大家都可以有自己的想法、跟观点、跟立场。Okay. And we have
Okay. Mhm.
sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. We have an anonymous question.
Mhm.
Okay. So if my friend is suffering from domestic violence, how should I explain the cause and the result with her. I think she's referring to the causal relation in Buddhism. So the cause and the result. And how should I offer comfort to this friend?
Mhm. I mean, no one deserves any kind of violence, right?
Mm,
Let alone domestic violence. No one deserves
mm,
it.
mm,
That's for sure. If you
mhm,
witness, if you know someone who's a victim of such a thing, then you
mm,
should step in, right?
mm,
Uh,
mhm, mhm,
that's for sure.
mm,
But if we explain why this is
mm,
happening, right?
mm,
And then,
mm,
of course, you know, from the society, from culture,
mm,
we can explain from a different perspective. But
mhm,
from Buddhist perspective,
mhm,
yes, this is somewhat, the result of uh, one's previous karma. That's the
mhm,
only explanations Buddhists can have, right? Um,
mhm,
why people die young, why even
mhm,
babies die, right?
mhm,
Well, it's so unfortunate. No one
mhm,
should die when they're babies. But again, in overall, the notion itself is the Buddhist is karma for Buddhists.
mhm, mhm,
But that doesn't mean that we just leave it alone,
mhm,
saying that this is because of her karma.
mhm,
She or he is a victim of that
mhm,
violence, right? We shouldn't
mhm,
just leave there.
mhm,
We should step in. We should try
mhm,
to make effort to
mhm,
resolve these issues,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
So
mhm,
yeah, uh, even as a Buddhist, even you have some kind of explanation, this causal explanation why this violence happens,
mhm,
but it doesn't mean
mhm,
you stop there.
mhm, mhm,
You should engage in. This is
mhm,
something we talked about it, I believe, in early class. I think we just mentioned it,
mhm,
the difference between free will and predetermination.
mhm,
And the Buddhists, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, Indo-Tibetan Buddhism,
mhm,
uh, for the question whether there's a free will or everything is predetermined, the
mhm,
Buddhists would explain that it's kind of mixed, like a soft determinism. Free will still has a play, still has a role to play.
mhm,
So yeah, basically that's what I think at the moment.
嗯哼，嗯哼。哎，好，所以同学的问题就是说，如果朋友被家暴，应该如何跟他解释因果，而且要如何安慰他？那老师的回答是说，没有任何人应该遭受到被暴力对待，更不用说家暴的受害者，没有人应该要受到暴力。那所以，如果这个受害者是你认识的人，一定要去帮助他。那如果你想要跟他解释背后的原因，譬如说啊，可能是我社会啦，可能是某个民族的文化，呃，如果要用佛教来解释的话，的确，唯一的解释方法就是这是他之前的业。譬如说，有些人为什么年纪轻轻就已经过世了？为什么有的小 baby 一出生就死了？那这些都是很遗憾的事情。那以佛教的观点，就是这是跟业有关，但是不要不只是解释了这件事情，然后就停在那里，或者是袖手旁观，一定要再进一步的去协助他，帮助他，不要再继续遭受暴力，然后去解决这个问题。因为就算是你是佛教徒，你认为因果是解答， 也不应该就只有给出这个解答，而不去采取实际的行动。那老师就进一步的讲说，不管是印度的或者是中国西部的佛教，其实大家常常都会讨论到说，哦，如果一切来自于业，那是不是一切东西都在我们出生之前就决定好了？还是我们人还是会有自由意志的呢？那其实这个讨论是，他们会说是一半一半，就是有一些事情是的确因为业的关系被决定安排好了，但是我们还是有自由意志。所以老师用这个讨论，就是想要告诉我们说，不要只是提供解释，而也要提供实际上的协助，让他不要再继续遭受这个暴力。
好，other questions?
Um, yes. Recently, so I have been studying Buddhism for a while, okay, but only in recent 2 years do I realize that I am learning Tibetan Buddhism. And but in my own home, I already have altars, statues, and sutras, and I think that the Bodhisattva or the Buddha that is on the altar at home may be Mahayana lineage, Han lineage. So sometimes I feel like, oh, the Buddhism I learned and what I heard from home is similar, but sometimes they are different. For example, Mahayana doesn't emphasize seeds, and I think here in the system, seeds means karma. So
Mm.
from her experience, Mahayana, the Han lineage, doesn't mention karma at all. And because she would like to, because sometimes she compares different lineages, and that's why she wants to learn from you a more objective perspective of how these two lineages differ from each other and how to respect teachings from both sides, because it feels like in her home when they're doing the worship of the bodhisattva or the Buddha, it's more like a form rather than, content or intention. And she doesn't feel much, she doesn't feel that's good if it's just like a form and you're just doing it for doing its sake.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. Yeah, so there are so many different forms of Buddhism, and sometimes people argue that some scholars argue that we can't really talk about Buddhism
Mm,
because there are Buddhisms, there's multitude of
mm, mm,
Buddhism, different forms of Buddhism. So one
mm,
can never say that, oh, Buddhism teaches this, Buddhism prohibits this. That
mm,
uh, you know, that kind of speech wouldn't work because
mm,
Buddhism
mm,
has different
mm,
forms, right?
mm, mm,
And
mm,
even each tradition, each major traditions, whether it's a Han Chinese tradition or a Japanese tradition, Tibetan, or they they believe that Buddha didn't speak only one kind of thing,
mm,
didn't
mm,
teach only one kind of teaching, right?
mm,
The traditions claim that the Buddha
mm,
uh, taught differently
mm,
based on the student's mental capacity,
mm,
right?
mm,
So in that regard, many of Buddhist teachings are actually contradictory each other.
mm, mm,
And one specific thing the Buddha said yes, another specific, I mean, in another occasion, the Buddha said the same thing, so no. So there's so
mm,
many different.
mm, mm,
So after all, um, we should understand that Buddhism is not one solid singular thing, right?
mm,
I think we also mentioned last time that the Buddhism is kind of considered a fluid religion, right?
mm,
And
mm,
it change the shapes and whenever it is adopted in a specific tradition or culture, then it shapes its form and then somehow, adapted in harmony with that tradition, right?
mm,
So when the Chinese people received Buddhist teachings, the Buddhism flourished in China became Chinese Buddhism, right? It's
mm,
so much shaped in Chinese culture, Chinese understanding, uh, and then with harmony with Chinese indigenous traditions like Taoism or uh, Confucius, Confucianism, Confucius teachings, right? And then so many different forms of indigenous religions, and people receive Buddhism differently, right?
mm,
So this phenomenon is not unique to Chinese people. It's like everywhere, whenever Buddhism reaches, it changes its form. And
mm,
for example, in the nomadic cultures in Mongolia, for example, it changes a certain form of Buddhism developed, right?
mm,
And semi-nomadic Tibet or, uh, in Central Asia, or let's say in India and in different parts of India, the Buddhism flourished in different forms, right? So we understand that fact. And it's also not true that some people argue that Tibetan Buddhism is more interpretive, more rational, whereas
More what?
rational,
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah. Whereas East Asian Buddhism is more, it's more faith related.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's also not true,
Mm,
I think, right?
mm, mm,
So this kind of superstitious looking practices are still found in Tibet.
mm,
Many Tibetan Buddhists and ordinary Tibetans don't study Buddhism in scholarly manner, right? They
mm,
also do the same thing where the Chinese households do, right? So they just
mm,
automatically
mm,
worship the statue or just offer the statue. It's more like ritualistic, and they
mm,
don't probably don't know how karma works, right? They don't know what the theory of selflessness is, right? And they don't necessarily understand um, the theory of emptiness, etc., right?
mm,
But nevertheless, they practice Buddhism
mm,
in a similar way that Chinese ordinary households did in the past, right?
mm,
So, my understanding is there is no better or worse form of Buddhism. There's just different types of Buddhism. And
mm,
what kind of form of Buddhism you follow or adopt is really your own business, right?
mm,
It would be nice if you can understand different forms of Buddhism and
mm,
can compare them together
mm,
and then try to find resolve the contradictory issues, then it would be great. But if you can't,
mm,
don't bother that. Just follow
mm,
one type of Buddhism.
mm,
And my understanding is any type of Buddhism, any major form of Buddhism is uh it's not, you know, um how to say, it's not principally contradictory to other form of Buddhism or other forms of Buddhism.
mm,
Right? Probably they have different approaches, but
mm,
after all, it is kind of aiming toward the same goal, which
mm,
is uh, mental peace.
mm,
Right? So that part is important. So I don't think, in that regard, I don't think Buddhism you practice and Buddhism you witness at home in a village, in Chinese village
mm,
or Taiwanese village, whatever, are necessarily different, or one is better than the other.
嗯。嗯，同学的问题是说，我最近才知道自己学习将近2年的中国西部佛教的内容，但是自己家里的佛堂有佛像、有佛经，我想家里供养的佛陀或菩萨可能是偏向汉传，两边学习到的内容有点像又不一样，像是汉传就完全没提到种子。因为我自己会有比较心，因此想从老师这边更客观的了解这两者的不同，以及如何尊重两边的教授。现在在家里拜拜都只有形式上拜拜，感觉这样不太好。老师说这是一个很好的问题，那其实呢，他说有人会说佛教，那佛教的说法好像就是说它就是一个教。可是事实上呢，有一些学者会说，我们不能说佛教是一个单一宗教，因为佛教有太多不同的传承了。所以，当你有如此多不同的传承的时候，你不能说某一个传承教的就一定是对的，或者是说，佛教它一定教的都是这个样子，佛教都是禁止这些东西，因为每一些传承会有一些细微的差别，所以不能用一个传承去代表其他的。那在佛教它的形式呢，跟它的传承其实很有趣的，就是说，今天我们看汉传的佛教、日本的佛教、中国西部的佛教，其实都不太一样。那所以说，而且呢，其实据以前的大德他们在讲，就是他们相信佛陀的法教也不是只有一种，佛陀其实是根据他遇到的学生的根器来做教学的。这就是为什么有的时候在类似的事情，你可能会听到佛陀在这边讲说要这样做，可是，在面对另外一群人或另外一边的时候，他会又讲出不同的做法，然后这一些做法或者是观点听起来乍听之下其实是相反的。所以说，我们要认识到的就是说，佛教它并不是一个单一的，或者是说一个很固定的一个宗教。事实上，我们之前有讲过，佛教是很有弹性，它是可以随顺的。就像我们看佛教传到不同的地方，其实它在每个文化都适应跟融合的很好，而且可以跟那个文化达到一个和谐的状态。譬如说，中国那时候佛教传入中国，然后在中国很兴盛的时候，它其实是跟中国文化融合的，它也没有因为传入中国就跟中国其他宗教冲突，反而佛教、道教、儒教，他们都是就是各有各的特色，然后也没有就是因此而起冲突。所以说，我们就知道说，佛教跟当地文化融合的现象是很普遍的。譬如说，它传到中国就跟中国文化融合，它传到蒙古就跟蒙古的游牧民族的文化融合，然后它传到中国西部就跟那种半游牧民族的文化融合。那它传到它在印度发扬光大，它也是跟自己当地的文化也是有它的关系。所以其实佛教它是可以跟不同文化结合而变得兴盛的。那可能有人会说，诶，没有哦，我觉得那个中国西部的佛教啊，他们比较理性，然后比较善于思辨，然后东亚的佛教呢，就比较注重信仰，你一定要相信他。但是以老师他的认识呢，这一点不是完全正确的，因为他也在中国西部看到很多迷信的，就好像信徒似的，他们可能就是一般的。中国西部的人，他们不会去研究佛教，他们不会用论理或思辨的方式，不会像学者这样子的，他们可能也是看到佛像就会去拜，就觉得哦，这个佛像有一个神奇的力量。然后他们可能也不知道业力是如何运作的，他们不知道无我的观念，他们也不知道空性见。然后所以所以就是即便是在中国西部，也是有这样的人，他是这样子的去信佛教的，因此并没有说哪一个佛教就比较好，哪一个佛教就比较不好。那你决定要练习哪一派的佛教，其实是你的选择。 那假如说你有机会去认识不同传承的佛教跟修持跟观点，其实是好的。但是如果没有的话，也没有关系，就遵循你选择的这个道路。然后老师他觉得，任何主要的佛教的传承，其实原则上都是相通的，可能他们切入点，他们在讲的时候不太一样，但是他们的目标是一致的，就是说他们都是希望大家可以达到内心的平静。所以呢，其实你在练习的，你现在在学习的这个佛教，跟你在家里看到的佛教并没有不同，也没有谁比较好，谁比较不好，那就只是个人的选择而已。
Some Buddhist teachings um, prefer faith, right? Faith is the probably the most important practice. And others teach that no, blind faith is not good. Instead, one should comprehend the teachings using reasoning, right? Kind of
嗯
logical reasoning,
嗯
this kind of
嗯
realization, comprehensive realization is
嗯
interpretive realization is more important.
嗯
And but and the others say that well, um, none is good because uh, both faith and this kind of comprehension leads to more um, constructive elaboration,
嗯
whereas Buddhism really teaches
嗯
that the one should free from all this kind of elaborations, all this kind of conceptual thinking, right?
嗯
So in order to free oneself from this conceptual thinking, you should leave all this kind of concerns,
嗯
both logical reasoning or some kind of this uh, uh, faith-based practice, right? So
嗯
there's so many different methods to practice Buddhism. So
嗯
in that regard, I don't I don't think one is better than the other. It's the question of what kind of teaching is more suitable for you that is
嗯
probably more important.
嗯嗯，OK。就是有些人会说，信仰光靠信仰来支撑自己的宗教是不好的，因为那有可能会让你变成盲目的信仰、盲目的跟随。然后有些人就会觉得，哦，你一定要懂你在学什么啊，然后你要逻辑啊，然后你要论理啊，这样是比较重要的，不要盲目的相信。那也会有人说，信仰也不好，然后你要去知道它的逻辑原理，然后去辩证，这也不好，因为越多的知识就可能只会造成知识障跟分别心。所以佛教不就是要我们放下这一些分别心，或者是一直注重在我们只有概念啊，一直注重在头脑的练习啊。然后这样子的话，如果我们一直执着这些东西，可能就没有办法达到我们真正的目的。那所以就会有各种说法出来。有的人会觉得不要一昧的相信，然后也不要一直去学习逻辑理论这一些。但是老师想要强调的是说，其实有很多学习跟接触佛教的方法，他们真的都没有谁比较好，谁比较坏。重点是要找到适合你的，每一个都一样，就是有它的优点，就找到适合你的就好。
You have another one
Yes,
or not?
we do have the last one. OK，
Okay.
那我们问完许勋的问题之后，就要进入课程了。不过大家问题都非常的精彩。OK，her question is she wants to know about donating organs, organ donation. Um, so how can Buddhists learn and understand about this topic from Buddha's teaching? Her understanding is that when we are at the end of our life, medically, there will be like when the vital signs stop, then we are dead.
Mhm.
But her understanding is that in terms of Buddhism, actually it's different from when we decide or determine that this person is dead. However, because organs, some of them have to be immediately taken away and to be planted on someone else, to in order to help that being. If it's past certain time, then it's no use to the person, cannot
Right.
help them. So when one decided to give their organs away, would that also influence their state at the end of their life? I guess she's saying this because some teaching will say, do not touch the body for certain times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. And she want to thank you for your help.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's also a very tough question. Yeah. Um, yeah, the difficulties, of course, and even whether donating organs is a good thing or not, that's also another set of questions the Buddhists also could struggle, right? So, do we have such examples? Yes, right? And for example, in early Jataka stories, Buddha explains that one of his previous lives, he was a prince and then offered his body to uh, hungry tigers and its cubs, right? The little baby tigers. Um, that is an offering that is non-different than organ donation, right? So there are cases. But then when it comes to highest yoga tantra, for example, then uh, during initiation, one gets the vow, receives the vow that they won't give up on their body because this very body becomes Buddha, right? And with this body, one can reach Buddhahood. So this is one shouldn't uh, discard any kind of any part of essential part of the body because uh, this body is prepared to become a Buddha's body. So it is kind of even it would be against one's tantric vow, right? So again, we just talked about this kind of contradictions within Buddhist teaching. So there are so many different traditions, right? So it also depends on that, right? So, well, should we wait until the Buddhist death really happens or not? Well, that's also a very difficult question because uh, if scientifically someone is dead, right, there's almost no hope that that person will rise again, right? Sure, Buddhists believe that, well, the subtle mind is still in the consciousness still in the body. So until the consciousness is separate from the body, then it wouldn't be considered death, right? But scientifically, the death happens way earlier than that, right? So if we believe uh, in if we at least like respect science, then I personally I would say that let the doctors take the body, the parts of the body, the organs, before the subtle death happens, because that person is gonna die anyway from clinical death. He or she wouldn't rise back, right? So why not? I mean, the consciousness is, after all, it's not a body, according to many Buddhist, many forms of Buddhism, many like mainstream forms of Buddhism. Consciousness is not a physical thing, right? So while the subtle consciousness still related to this body, karmically related to this body, uh, I would say it's okay to take the organs because that person divides again, and then
Mm-hmm.
non-physical body, mind is still related to it or not. That really doesn't matter much, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I think. It's my
Mm-hmm.
yeah, my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 好，许询的问题是说，想请教老师关于器官捐赠的疑惑，佛教徒应该如何以佛陀老师的教导来学习与理解？我的理解是，当我们临终时，医学上的生命现象停止与佛教观的时间判定是有差异性的，但有一些器官必须马上进行摘除移植，这样，当决定布施器官时，是否会对我们临终时的优先带来一定程度的影响？好老师说，这个问题也超级难回答的他说，其实呢，捐赠器官到底好不好，真的是应该是蛮多佛教徒都会有挣扎过。那其实，在本身经里面呢，有一个故事是说，佛陀有一世是一个王子，然后他在山里面就看到一只饥饿的母老虎，它生了一窝小老虎，但是没有东西可以喂它们吃，所以佛陀就把自己的身体供养布施给这些老虎。那其实这个不就是像我们在做器官捐赠的决定一样吗？那但是如果你是进了密乘，然后而且你有守密乘的戒律，在最高的瑜伽部里面，他们有一个戒律，就是说无论如何你都不放弃自己的身体，因为这个身体是有可能成佛的，这个身体是有可能证得佛果的，所以你不能放弃这一个身体。因此，就像我们上一题讲的，就是说，其实不同的佛教传承，它也有不同的看法。那我们究竟要在科学医学判断的时间就认定自己死了，还是要照佛教观点的？那老师是说，在科学上，如果一个人已经科学宣布说，OK，这个人已经死了，基本上他是不会再活过来的。那尽管这个时候他的意识可能还在身体里面，可是他是没有生还的机会了。因此，如果我们尊重科学的话，在那个时间，老师说，如果是他，而且如果他有决定捐赠器官，他就会让医生把器官摘除，而不会等到佛教认为的那个要等到你的神识啊，什么魂魄都离开身体了再摘除，因为这个人他医学宣布他死亡的时候，他就已经没有活过来的可能了。那尽管这个时候意识还没有离开我们的身体，意识还因为业果的关系跟这个身体有一些联系，但是呢，他老师觉得他个人的话，他是觉得这个时候摘除器官是没有问题的。那当然，这完全是老师个人的理解跟看法，然后在此提供给大家参考。
Okay, so should we move to
Yes,
class?
you're teaching today.
Okay, so since we half of the time is gone, so we can just go over quickly uh the other health. This is actually the way I prepared. So we have this eight grade health, and within the eight grade health, there are kind of neighboring different health realms, and there's the lists. We have different lists, right? And
嗯
then the both the text we're studying and then the root text, which is the sutra, are
嗯哼
explaining the different kind of tortures and what kind of uh, karma leads to that specific hell. So that's basically the content of the book, content of the text, right? So we don't need to go over this in detail because it's quite repetitive.
嗯
And
哼
then there's no, I don't think there is no need, but we had this kind of basic idea that heinous karmas lead to the most terrible hell
嗯
realms, and then one
嗯
needs to stay there for a very long time, right?
嗯嗯。好，那因为我们上个礼拜已经有讲了综合地狱，那接下来老师刚刚给我们看的图跟现在都是嚎叫，一个是嚎叫地狱，一个是大嚎叫地狱。那老师说，其实，在这些根本文本里面，他们主要就是在解释说，在不同的地狱里面会有什么样的折磨，什么样的酷刑，然后又因为什么样的业，大家会堕到这一些地狱去。那其实呢，它因为折磨的方法呢，跟业力的部分，其实重复性都跟我们之前上的课的内容蛮高的，所以呢，老师就不会一个一个跟大家细讲。不过它的重点就是在讲说，你所犯下的这个业越重，你就会掉到越糟糕的地狱，然后你掉到越糟糕的地狱，你要在那边待的时间就越久。
Mhm. So I'm gonna pause them anyway. So you will, if it's needed, you can just look at this list. So these are the all uh,
然后这
the
是
list
烧
of
热地
of
狱，然
great
后接下来
health.
这个是极热地狱。
Mhm.
嗯。
And
然后这
interestingly,
是无间地狱。
yeah, interestingly, some of the lists like 17, although the text
嗯
says 16, and I
嗯
just counted like two, three times. For
嗯
sure, there are 17 different hells, but somehow the text still says 16. So I don't know what was wrong with that. It's not only in this list, but in the earlier one or two lists, they claim the 16, but I'm sure there was 17. So I don't know what's happening, but anyway, these are their
嗯
hells.
嗯。老师在给大家看的这几个地狱里面，他就指出说，其实他数了好几遍，他觉得有些地狱再怎么数就是17个，可是不知道文本里面为什么就讲说只有16个哦。那之前的地狱也有这样的状况，明明就有17个，可是文本就说只有16个。
So the ultimate torment hell is the last uh, hot hell that the
嗯
text talks about.
嗯。那在文本里面讲到八热地狱的最后一个地狱就叫做无间地狱。
So if we zoom out a little bit, why are we talking about it? What type of teachings this to what type of teachings this the discussion of hell is related, then we got to remind ourselves the concept of the three types of persons.
嗯嗯。那如果说你很好奇，说为什么要有这样的教授，为什么要讨论地狱道，我们就要回来复习一下，有3种人。
Mhm. So the concept of three paths of the paths of the three types of persons is first taught by Atisha. We all know that, and the Tsongkhapa somehow adopted this concept.
嗯嗯。那其实有3种人的这一个概念是来自于阿底峡尊者，但是宗喀巴大师呢就采纳了阿底峡尊者的观点。
Mhm. So then the three types of person is it's not you know they didn't divide up individuals into these three categories based on the people's race or based on caste or based on I don't know some kind of um, wealth or origin, etc.
那当他们在分这个上士道、中士道跟下士道的时候，他们不是根据种族，也不是根据种姓，或者是说你有多少钱，或者是说你是从哪一个国家来，不是这样分的。
Instead, the difference is people's mental capacity and the way they can practice Buddhism, the ways, different ways they can practice Buddhism.
嗯。 他们则是根据人们的根器，就是他们的一些天赋啦、理解程度啦，还有他们能够用不同的方法去修持佛法，这样子去做分类。
Mhm. So I have a quick question. So if you can answer quickly, that would be great. So what are the differences between these two? I mean, between these three types of beings, as you
Mm,
understand? Because I understand that many of you have studied Lamrim before, and the
mm,
Lamrim is all about these three types of beings, right? So
mm,
just to remind ourselves that I want some of one of you to answer the difference between these
mm.
three people.
OK。那老师知道很多人在座的很多人都学过道次第，所以老师想要问说，为什么这是怎么分？这三世道是怎么分？大家的认识是什么？那看大家要开麦克风讲，或者是打在我们的聊天室都可以哦。老师只是想要了解大家的理解，所以如果
Yeah,
有人可以分享一下
我可以讲一下我理解到
，OK。
的。
OK，so
呃
Yoga volunteer to share her understanding。
great.
呃，我理解到的下士道是不想要堕入下三道，然后中士道是不想要再轮回，然后
嗯
上士道是想要众生都脱离所有烦恼，然后前面就是只有自己这样子。
嗯嗯
好，
，OK。
大概是这样理解。
So her understanding is that if you are from the lesser capacity, the practice is more focused on oneself, and the goal is not to fall into the three lower realms. And in the medium capacity, this type of persons don't want to come back to the reincarnation again. They want to be out of samsara.
Mhm.
And for their great capacity, they want all beings to be free of afflictions.
Yes. So yeah, basically, this answer is correct, right? So the teachings of hell realms is really related to the teachings of the persons of lesser capacity.
所以瑜伽打的没有错，就是说基本上呢，关于恶趣，就是关于地狱道的这个教导，主要是为了下士道而设计的。
Mhm. Even you really are afraid of suffering of the hell realms or other lower realms, unfortunate rebirth, then even you, based on that, if you want to reborn in a high rebirth, like
嗯
a god or a human being, then you would be still considered a person of a lesser capacity, right?
嗯嗯。所以说，如果说你是害怕或不想堕入地狱道或其他的恶趣，然后你希望自己可以投身到善趣，也就是上三道的话呢，那你就会被归类为下士道的人。
So in brief, if you have attachment to samsara, whether it's wealth, health, fame, or better rebirth, it really doesn't matter. If you're really attached to samsara, then you lesser capacity.
嗯。所以说，简单的来讲，如果你对轮回还有任何的留恋，你想说啊，下一次回来我要赚大钱呐、我要身体健康啊，我要投胎到上三道，只要你对轮回还有留恋，你就是下士道的。
Mhm. And in that regard, you're correct. For the persons of medium capacity, the difference is that, not only afraid of hell realms or lower rebirth, but afraid of the whole samsara itself,
嗯
then that person is a person of medium capacity.
嗯。那中士道就是他不只害怕堕入恶趣下三道，他也不喜欢轮回，这就是中士道。
Mhm. Um, the similarity between these two is that both the person of lesser capacity, the person of medium capacity, have this kind of uh, their work is for the sake of their own benefit.
嗯。 那下士道跟中士道的共通点就是，他们是为了自己的利益而修行。
So in that regard, they can be considered somewhat selfish,
嗯，
both lesser and medium capacity people.
如果以这个观点看来的话呢，那他们两者都可以被视为是有一点自私的。
But the person of great capacity is different from these two because the person of great capacity is intended to free all sentient beings from this samsaric suffering, right? So in that regard, it is considered the great capacity person.
嗯，那上士道的人呢，跟中士道跟下士道不一样，是因为他们希望所有的众生都能脱离轮回。
Mhm. But in the Lamrim, Tsongkhapa made it very clear that the path of persons of greater capacity contains the path of the two other types of beings, right? So in that regard, the path of persons of greater capacity is not a separate path, but it's kind of larger path that contains all the Buddhist path of the lower capacity
嗯
individuals.
嗯。但是呢，宗喀巴大师在道次第里面有讲说，其实上士道的人，他们也会有中士道跟下士道的动机，所以我们不应该把这三条路，尤其是上士道，看成跟其他两条不一样或分开的道路，而应该把它视为一条更广大的道路，里面有包含着中士道跟下士道。
And he said, we should consider certain paths common to those two to be preliminary practices leading to the path of persons of great capacity. They take them to be the part of training in the path of persons of great. So basically, he says, the path of the lesser capacity individual and the path of medium capacity individual is there are common to the path of the great capacity individual, right? So this is only a part of the path of the great capacity person. It's not a separate thing. It's leading to the same direction as a part of the same path.
所以宗喀巴大师就说了，他说呢，其实他叫中士道跟下士道，他叫共下士道跟共中士道，就是因为你经过了这两条道路，你就可以来到上士道。那所以你不妨把下士道跟中士道的练习当做是一个前行，因为三者都是朝向同一个方向的。
So I'm glad that many of you are familiar with this teaching, and then it would be some kind of review before we explain the path of great capacity person.
嗯。那老师很开心，大家都很熟悉道次第的基础。那我们可以把目前的教的这些当成复习。那复习完了之后，我们就可以进入上士道的内容。
So this is one of the earlier slides. We already talked about death and future lives, etc. So this set of teaching is a part of the path of the lesser capacity person.
这是我们之前刚开始上课的时候，老师曾经用过的一张投影片，里面讲到死亡与来生。那这个主题就是针对下士道的人所教授的。
So the teaching of death, about death, a teaching of karma and its result are they belong to the path of lesser capacity person's teaching.
老师说，跟死亡有关的教导，还有与业力有关的教导，都是下士道学习的主题。
Just to remind you about karma, that we already talked about karma. Certain karma increases, and there is no meaning with karma you've not created, and the karma you created doesn't dissipate. So these are the 4 points about the karma.
那再复习一下业的四个特性哦。第一个就是业力是确定会发生的，而且业力会倍增。那如果你没有你没有采取任何的就是行动的话，不会有业。可是如果你采取了行动，创造出来的业，它不会随便消失。
So basically, death and karma are the most important two kinds of teaching that belong to the lesser capacity person's teaching.
因此，死亡与业力是下士道最重要的两个主题。
Mhm. So in addition to these two, of course, taking refuge in the three jewels. So those are the three most important teachings.
那当然，除了这两个之外，皈依三宝也是非常重要的一个主题。
Mhm. And as for the medium capacity person's teaching, we already covered the Four Noble Truths and the 12 links of dependent origination. So those are the two sets of teachings that are most important for the medium capacity person.
嗯，那对中士道的人来讲呢，最重要的就是四圣谛，还有12因缘。那这个我们之前也有讲过。
So as I promised in the last class that I want to cover um, the teachings of the persons of great capacity this time.
那上一堂课我有承诺过说，这一次我要给大家讲上士道的内容。
Mhm. So it says how do we enter the great vehicle, right? The great vehicle, those who enter the great vehicle are considered the persons of great capacity.
那我们要如何进入大
Generally.
圣呢？就是一般来讲，可以进入大圣的，就是有很大的能力。
Mhm. And it says, generating the mind of enlightenment, generating bodhicitta is the only gateway to the great vehicle.
然后它上面有讲到说，发菩提心是唯一进入大圣的方法。
So we need to obviously memorize this point. This is important, right? The only way to get into great vehicle is generating bodhicitta.
嗯，所以我们要记得这一点哦，就是唯一进入大圣的方法就是发菩提心。
So based on our earlier teachings, who would like to answer the only way to enter uh, enter Buddhism? What is it?
那我们要来发问一题相似的题目，然后这是之前有教过的内容哦，就是唯有怎么样怎么样才算是入了佛教呢？大家有没有印象？
Anyone would like to answer?
嗯，
If
那么大家
bodhicitta is a gateway to great vehicle, what is the gateway to Buddhism?
唯有发菩提心才能入大乘门，那唯有怎样怎样才能入佛教？Taking refuge to the three jewels。
That is correct, right? So we all,
没错，恭喜这位乱猜的同学，你答对了。
yeah. So by now, I'm so happy that you actually memorized this. So you
老师
remember
很
this,
开心，老师很开心，大家还记得他所教授的内容。
yeah. So people often talk about the three gateways. So the gateway to Buddhism is taking refuge in the three jewels. Generating bodhicitta is the gateway to the great vehicle Mahayana, and receiving empowerment, tantric empowerment, is the gateway to Tantrayana.
Hold on. Receiving tantric empowerment
Mhm.
is the way to Tantrayana.
Yeah.
OK，好，那大家通常会讲三门，哪三门呢？第一个就是说，唯有皈依三宝才能入佛教的门，然后唯有发菩提心才能进大圣的门，然后唯有接受密教的灌顶才能入密圣的门。
And sometimes people add one more point, but the point is kind of the point needs some more explanation, elaboration. That is to say, some people say that the gateway to nirvana is
嗯
renunciation.
嗯嗯嗯。那有人会再加一句话，不过这句话需要一些解释。有人说呢，唯有发出离心，才能入涅槃的门。
So sometimes people call it four, but the last point has explanation because as soon as it doesn't mean that as soon as you generate renunciation, you renounce the world, then you reach nirvana, right?
嗯
Renunciation leads to nirvana, but it's not the immediate gateway to nirvana. That's the only explanation.
嗯，OK。好所以有的时候有人就会因为最后这句，他就会说其实是四门，不是三门。但是第四道门需要厘清的是，并不是你在一发出离心的那一刹那，你就立刻涅槃的。发出离心是让你朝向涅槃的方向前进，但是它不是立即就会到达涅槃的这个成果。
So when we talk about the great capacity person or their practice, the form of their practice is the great vehicle, then
嗯
we necessarily talk about bodhicitta
嗯，
or the mind
所
of
以
enlightenment.
嗯。当我们谈到大乘行者跟他们的练习的时候，他们的一个重点就是发菩提心。
So as Tsongkhapa elaborated, explained, there are main ways, two principal ways to generate bodhicitta. One is called the sevenfold cause and effect,
嗯哼，
transmitted from Atisha.
嗯哼，
And the other one is called equalizing and exchanging oneself with others and others.
嗯哼，
That is transmitted from Shantideva.
嗯嗯。好，那就是根据吉天大师说呢，就是发菩提心有两个重点，就是发菩提心要知道你的修心次第。那修心次第有两个，一个是跟七重因果有关的教授，另外一个就是自他交换的教授。
So these are the two important practices, equalizing,
哦，
exchanging oneself and others.
Sorry, sorry, I made a small mistake. I have to correct. 抱歉
Mhm.
哦，那个七重因果的教授是阿底峡大师，然后吉天大师的是自他交换。Sorry, please repeat and what you just said, and you can continue.
Um, so what did I say? Well, that's
I think you
probably,
started something and I cut you off, but I
yeah,
translated the previous part. That was no problem.
yeah,
Just
that's
the
okay.
new
That's
part,
okay.
the new part.
Yeah, that's okay. So I think that I was talking about the same thing.
Mhm.
So I just chose this art, this depiction.
Mm.
And does anyone recognize this deity image?
嗯嗯，那大家可以看一下画面中的这一幅唐卡。老师问说，有没有人认出正中央的这一位是哪一位呢？
Mhm. So this deity has 11 heads,
因为
and
他有
this
十
white
一
part
颗头。
and like this disc-looking white things are actually arms. So there are
哦，OK OK
$1,000 arms.
OK，所以它有11个头，然后你会以为说它为什么后面有一个白色的盘子，但是那不是盘子，那是很多只手臂。So someone says thousand hand, thousand eyed Avalokiteshvara, and some said forearm Avalokiteshvara.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's correct. The former is correct because it is clearly that 1,000 arms
Mm.
and one eye on each of the palm.
哦
So
，OK，好。
palm has
所以老
one
师
arm,
说，
one
只是
eye
刚刚
here.
同学有回答千手千眼观音，然后有同学回答四臂观音，那老师说是千手千眼观音哦，因为你看它后面那个像盘子的里面是1000只手， 然后因为每一只手的掌心又有一个眼睛，所以它是千手千眼观。
Mhm. So what do you think? Why did I select this image? What is it related to? And this is, of course, an artwork, right? How can we
嗯
relate to this, the concept of Mahayana?
嗯，那老师想要请大家猜一猜哦，为什么老师会选择千手千眼观音来跟大乘的法教作为一个连结？为什么他要这样选？他的用意是什么？
Anyone has an opinion?
嗯，大家有没有看法啊？都可以在聊天室跟我们分享，或是直接开麦跟我们分享。
因为刚刚有讲到那个大乘不就是要救助众生嘛，然后
嗯
所以我觉得众生就是要有几千几百个来救，所以老师选这个。
So yoga says because Mahayana wants to help all sentient beings, and there are so many sentient beings, so we definitely need a lot of arms and eyes. So that's why.
That's exactly right, right? Right? That's exactly right. So 1,000
And
is just the
so
number of
there are two more answers. I just want to
sure,
also
sure, please,
honor
yeah.
their answer. So one of our melody says, Avalokiteshvara is the most compassionate and most popular deity.
Uh-huh.
And another friend says, because Bodhicitta helps everyone to become Avalokiteshvara. So these are other answers.
Wow. So all answers are correct, actually. And I'm really
Mm,
satisfied. I mean, all today,
mm.
anytime when I ask question, you guys answer easily and correctly. But your questions are so tough. I had to think.
老师说他觉得群群、纲领跟Yoga 讲的答案都很好，然后他就说这也太不公平了吧！今天我不管问什么问题，大家都回答的很好，可是你们都问我一些很难的问题，我
Yeah. So that's exactly right. So the 1,000 is just not a fixed number. It just means infinite number, so
嗯
many.
嗯
So because of the number of sentient beings, Avalokiteshvara has to perceive them with his eyes and then
嗯
help them, reach out and help
嗯
uh,
嗯
with the hand.
嗯
So that's exactly right. One thing I just remembered is that the Guanyin Chinese deity is identified as Avalokiteshvara, right? But in the
嗯
Chinese
嗯
culture, somehow it's a female deity.
嗯
But then in the Tibetan tradition, it's a male deity. That's kind of interesting to me.
嗯嗯嗯。所以老师说，为什么叫千手千眼观音呢？就是因为实在太多众生了，所以这个千其实也不是确切数目，那个千只是要讲说很多手跟很多眼睛。那因为有这么多手跟这么多眼睛，观世音菩萨才可以在及时看到众生需要帮助，然后赶快伸手去帮助他们。不过老师有注意到一个有趣的现象，就是说，在中国文化里面，观世音菩萨是女性，但是在中国西部里面，它却是男性。
Hmm? And then also an interesting art depiction here is that you can see my mouse cursor. This is
嗯
a ferocious deity head.
嗯哼嗯
So
哼
although Avalokiteshvara is, full of compassion and love, but
嗯
sometimes he shows, or she in Chinese
嗯
culture
嗯
shows this kind of ferocious form
嗯
when needed, right? Love and
嗯
compassion is not always kind of mild, peaceful looking, right? Love and
嗯
compassion can also can be seen as kind of wrathful and ferocious way.
嗯嗯 那老师刚刚有用他的滑鼠移到这个观世音头上的蓝色的那个脸，那大家就可以看到说，这个蓝色的脸其实是现愤怒尊的像哦。所以虽然观世音菩萨他是充满慈心与悲心的，但是我们要知道，慈心与悲心不代表你就永远都一定要笑容满面啊，或是一脸平静的样子。慈心与悲心也可以用愤怒尊的方式呈现。
And then on top head is Amitabha Buddha's head, considered
嗯。那最
Amitabha's
上
head,
面那个小小的头是阿弥陀佛的头，
right? So in that regard, Avalokiteshvara is some kind of emanation of Amitabha.
嗯，所以如果我们从这个观点来看的话，其实观世音菩萨也是阿弥陀佛的其中一个化身。
Mhm. And if you are familiar with the Mahakala, this deity, the wrathful deity, and Mahakala is also considered the wrathful
嗯
emanation of the same Buddha,
嗯
Avalokiteshvara slash Amitabha.
嗯，那如果大家有听过有一个愤怒尊，它叫做马哈嘎拉。那马哈嘎拉呢，它其实也被视作于观世音菩萨或是弥勒佛的其中一个化身，只是它的化身是愤怒尊的。
Mhm.
Someone has a question.
Sure.
She wants to know if the person on the top is Master Tsongkhapa and why is he here in this picture?
Yeah. So I believe this is actually the Dalai Lama.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So how can we
那
because
sorry.
he on his left hand there is a chakra, and
Oh,
usually this chakra is offered to political figures like the fifth Dalai Lama,
oh,
30th Dalai Lama or
oh,
something. So
okay.
yes, he's in Lama Tsongkhapa's tradition with this
Mhm,
yellow hat and also with
mhm,
this Manjushri sword and then
mhm,
Prajnaparamita Sutra on lotus. But at the same time, he's also political, as a political figure, he's holding this chakra.
嗯嗯，OK。对，好，
Yeah.
老师相信呢，最上面的这位不是中科巴大师，而是目前在印度那位伟大的中国西部的老师。就是因为呢，你可以看到他的左手上面有一个石轮，那有这个轮的话，通常是政治领袖才会有拿到这个轮。然后，当然，他的帽子的确是黄教，就是宗喀巴大师的帽子。然后他右手也拿着文殊师利的宝剑，然后手上也有那个般若经。但是呢，就是老师相信他是中国西部的那位，就是最伟大的老师，是因为那个轮手上的那个轮。
And
OK，and
of course,
some，嗯
we all know that in Tibetan tradition, the Dalai Lama is considered the human form of Avalokiteshvara.
嗯
So in that
，OK，
regard, it's
嗯
pretty sure
，make
it is
sense，
the Dalai Lama.
嗯。而且呢，还有在那个中国西部的这个佛教传承，他们相信，这位最伟大的呃老师，这位最伟大的佛教老师，他是观世音菩萨的化身，这也就是为什么他会被画在最上面。OK，there's a question. Someone asked if the angry deity, the wrathful deity,
Uh-huh.
is it an emanation of Hayagriva?
Hayagriva, yes, Hayagriva is also related to Avalokiteshvara in some tradition. Hayagriva is considered like a tutelary deity form of Avalokiteshvara, right? So basically, the human form is the Dalai Lama, right? The Buddha
Mhm,
form is Amitabha, and the
mhm,
peaceful Bodhisattva form is Avalokiteshvara. And
mhm.
tutelary deity, tantric tutelary deity form is Hayagriva. And
What is
then
tutelary?
tutelary deity is a kind of tantric deities like Yamantaka, Hayagranta,
哦
Buhyasamacha,
哦 OK OK
Chakasambara, they're considered tutelary deities, right? And
OK
then
OK，
protected deity form is Mahakala. And
嗯
they're
哼
all categorized in the lotus family of the Buddha
嗯哼
forms. So
嗯哼
all related to the symbol is the lotus of all these deity and Buddhas I mentioned.
嗯。那老师说，就是因为佩林有问说，愤怒像是不是马头冥王？那老师说，马头冥王的确跟观世音菩萨有关。那就像我们刚刚讲的，就是说，同一个化身，他在平静的佛，他是以阿弥陀佛的像显现；然后如果是以护法的话，它是显现成马哈嘎拉的；然后如果是以人的形象的话，它是显现为就是印度那位中国西部来的最伟大的老师的像，所以它有不同的显现。
Just before I forget, I also just remembered a story about
嗯
Avalokiteshvara, especially this form with 11 head.
嗯，11 head，OK，、
Yeah. So when Avalokiteshvara generated bodhicitta, he
嗯
had this pledge, vow,
嗯
right?
嗯哼
If I can't
嗯
benefit all sentient beings, if I can't,
嗯
work on the benefit of all sentient beings,
嗯
let my head break up into 10 pieces,
嗯哼
right? So that was his promise.
嗯
So he's a great compassionate bodhisattva and constantly working on for the benefit of all sentient beings, right?
嗯
And he would visit all these hell realms that we cover so much, and
嗯
then uh, saved all these sentient beings in the hell. And
嗯
the legends or the stories say that the Avalokiteshvara or Guyan visited the hell, and then somehow with these miracles deeds, he can save all sentient beings and send them to God's realms, and he was constantly working on it, right? And he made a tremendous effort. And
嗯
whenever he can go and he can kind of free all these sentient beings in the hell and
嗯
empty this up, right? So he
嗯
was working greatly.
嗯
But the
哼
problem is,
嗯
whenever he kind of saved all the sentient beings in the hell,
嗯
and
哼
he thought, okay, so now I emptied all these hell realms,
嗯哼
and then look, you know, backward, look, then already the hell is full again
嗯哼嗯哼
because of the human's negative karma.
嗯哼
Although he was constantly working on that, then the next moment the hell is filled by other sentient beings. So sentient
嗯
beings, they're kind of non-stop accumulating
嗯
bad karma. Right?
嗯嗯
So he was exhausted.
嗯
He
嗯
always gave up on
嗯
his bodhicitta, right?
嗯
And as he promised, his head kind of broke down
嗯
to 10 pieces.
嗯
So you can translate up to this point.
OK，好，那老师要趁他忘记之前，跟大家分享一个跟观世音菩萨有关的故事。刚刚有提到这个观世音菩萨有11颗头嘛？那为什么他会有11颗头呢？就是因为，在这个观世音菩萨发菩提心的时候，他就是也立下一个承诺，就是说我一定要利益众生。如果我没有办法利益众生的话，我的头就会碎成10块。那就是十，就是那个数字的十啊，不是石头的石哦。就是然后他就是因为他非常的有慈悲心，他也很努力的在救度众生。那他有一个很神奇的力量，就是他每次去地狱的时候，他就会用他的那个神奇的力量，让整个地狱都净空，甚至让他们到天人界去。所以他就非常勤劳的在清空地狱，清空地狱。可是呢，他只要清空了地狱之后， 他回头看，就是因为众生的业啊的地狱又马上被填满，所以他就觉得他一直在清空地狱，可是地狱又每一瞬间又一直塞满人，一直塞满众生，所以他后来就累坏了。然后他一累，他就觉得他没有办法，就是守住他那个菩提心了，因此他的头就真的碎裂成10块。
Mhm. Then he was exhausted and his head now like in 10 pieces. Then Amitabha Buddha arrived to him and kind of raised him up. And then Amitabha's head became the 11th head and all
Mm,
united and kind of, you know, revived him from this kind of exhausted state. So
mm,
he continued working on the benefit of all sentient beings. So that's how the 11-headed 1,000-armed Buddha's form was depicted
mm,
according to the story. You know.
mm,
This is I'm saying this story because it's so cute story, somewhat
uh-huh,
related to this art depiction, and also
uh-huh.
somewhat related to hell that we uh, going over.
老师为什么要跟大家分享这个这么可爱的故事呢？是因为我们刚好讲到地狱道嘛，然后这个故事里面有救度地狱众生，然后刚好老师帮大家找这么美的这一张图，里面有11颗头，所以说他最后呢，就是说在这个观世音菩萨，他当时他的头碎成10块的时候，阿弥陀佛就出现了。然后阿弥陀佛就疗愈了，就把这个他的每一颗头拼回来，然后再加上自己的头，所以这个观世音菩萨就有11颗头，然后他们就可以一起再继续去帮助众生。
Okay, so what I really wanted to talk today was actually about this sevenfold cause and effect instructions transmitted from a teacher, right? So we partially covered in the last class. We talked about love and compassion, which are the fourth and the fifth in the list, right? But I'm sure many of you are already familiar with um, this concept of the sevenfold cause and effect. So according to Atisha's instruction, first one has to see all other sentient beings as his or her mother.
嗯
Right?
嗯
And the second, remembering the kindness of this this life this life's mother,
嗯
and then remember that all the sentient beings treated me with love, just like how my mother in this life treated me, right? So that's how one can um, apply the kindness of this life's mother to this practice. And the three is this kind of genuine wish to repay this kindness, and from there, love arises. We already talked about love last time. Love has to do with happiness,
嗯
and then similar emotion to love is compassion. Compassion has to do with suffering, wish to separate sentient beings from suffering. Then from there, this more powerful, stronger emotion arises. And that state of mind is called the extraordinary attitude, right? And
嗯
from there, bodhicitta is generated.
嗯。所以我们上个礼拜其实因为讲到慈心跟悲心的关系，已经有讲到7重因果的第4跟第5部分。那其实呢，阿底峡大师的教授就是说，7重因果的根本就是要知母，就是我们要知道说众生都曾经是我们的母亲。那第二个就是我们要念恩，念恩就是我们要感谢此生生下我们的妈妈。那因为众生都带着很多的爱在对待我， 我，就像今生的妈妈这么爱我一样。所以呢，我们就来到了报恩，我们要报答他们对我们的爱。那接下来呢，因为这个报恩，慈心就会升起。那上周有讲到说，慈心跟幸福快乐有关，而后面的那个悲心呢，则是跟受苦，就是我不要众生受苦有关，希望众生都可以脱离苦。然后，因为有了慈心跟悲心的升起呢，我们就会升起更强烈的增上意乐。那也因为增上意乐的关系，我们就会发菩提心。
Okay, so we have about like 10 minutes. Oh no, yeah, 10 minutes. So do you have other questions?
嗯，那
So
我
we
们
can
现在还
actually
有，
talk about the rest in the next class.
OK，我们现在还
Yeah.
有10分钟，有没有同学还有疑问？那老师可以在下一堂课再继续讲这个七重因果。那现在他想要知道大家有没有疑问？嗯，seems like everybody is okay. There's no question.
So do we have how many classes left after this?
Cool.
Only two. Okay.
嗯
So next class, I'm going to continue this you know the bodhicitta related topic, the Buddhist practice of the great capacity beings, and then a little bit about the tantric concepts, because this is
嗯哼
considered part of it,
嗯哼
and in relation to hell, of course, so
嗯
that's the
嗯
main
哼
topic. And then we also cover the hungry ghost realm,
嗯哼
right? And that's my plan for the next class.
嗯
And
哼
then in the last class, what do you prefer? Do you want to uh, continue teaching, or it can be just, casual Q&A session? And whatever you prefer would be fine with me.
嗯
I'm asking
啊
everyone.
OK OK，那老师想要跟我们那个预告一下电影预告，因为我们还有2堂课，然后下一次的课程，老师想要继续讲大乘，然后想要讲菩提心，那但是老师也想要帮我们讲一点密乘的，就是他想要帮我们做一个简单的介绍。那这个也就是他也会把地狱道的就是内容融合进来。然后还会讲一些恶鬼道，所以这是第9集前情提要。那第10题，some of them already say, "I can't believe we only have 2 classes. I want more." OK，所以好，我先偷偷回答一下，听不够怎么办？那我知道大家都非常的求知若渴，所以我已经在12月我会去跟 JB 老师争取，我们以后每年的春季跟秋季都要安排不同的老师来帮我们讲不同的主题，所以请大家密切注意，这样。Okay, so let me just translate another part of yours. I sidetrack. I start answering the question.
Sure.
然后第10堂课老师有问说，大家想要用就是轻松问答的方式吗？还是大家还是希望老师可以安排课程的内容，或者是你们有特别想听的课程内容？第10堂课它是开放给大家做建议。
Okay.
So yeah,
And if
I'm just
there's
asking them, but I think they need some time. 所以大家不用急着现在回答我，因为可能你们一时想不出来说你们第10堂课想要听什么。那大家可以就是在群组里面，或者是写在那个我们的问题的那个连结也可以，就让我们知道你第10堂课想要听什么主题，然后我会回复给老师，我们再做个安排。Someone does say that can you also cover some part of animal realm in the 10th class?
Yeah, we can do that, but the text we're studying is not much about animal realms.
Oh,
So
okay.
basically, the majority part is, of course, about hell realms, and small
Mm-hmm.
part is about the hungry ghost realm. But there was no
Mm,
like
Okay,
for
okay.
animal. So my guess is that as far as I remember, the root text, the root sutra,
Mm-hmm.
also didn't have much to speak about uh, animals.
Okay.
One reason, and the second, in the medieval period, even in the 19th century, especially Mongolians are no strangers of animals.
Mm-hmm.
They can see, they kind of animal husbandry, animal looking after animals. They experience suffering, different suffering of animals in
Mm-hmm.
daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably so obvious to them, what kind of
Oh,
suffering animals experience. It's
okay.
so obvious. So that
Okay.
maybe that would be one of the reasons. But
Mm,
I'm not sure. Um,
okay.
uh,
Uh, mm,
and
okay.
just related to this, if you request a special topic that we can give emphasis in the next two classes, then I'll be happy to do that as well.
Oh, so they can ask for special topic. Okay.
Right.
Yes. Okay. 老师说，动物畜生道虽然可以讲，但是可以讲的内容不会很多。第一个是因为我们这一次讲的这个下三道的文本里面本来就讲的不多。那之所以会讲的不多的原因，是因为蒙古人他们是跟动物很亲近的民族，他们一天到晚都在照顾动物。对他们而言，他们是很熟悉，就是说堕入畜生道会遭受什么样的痛苦啊、辛苦的地方，他们都很清楚。所以虽然可以讲畜生道，但是可能可以讲的东西没那么那所以老师就像刚刚说的，他说如果大家有特别想听的题目，可以建议，然后老师会斟酌安排。I do have a suggestion though.
Uh-huh.
I would wondering if you can give us an introduction about Mongolian Buddhism. Like, what's the specialty of Mongolian Buddhism and how it differs from other lineage? Because this is something that we are probably, at least I personally am not familiar. I'm not familiar with it. In Taiwan, we have Tibetan Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism,
Right.
even Theravada, but Mongolian Buddhism is very strange from us. So if you
Uh-huh.
can do that,
Yeah.
that's my suggestion. I'm still
Yeah,
collecting
that's a great
opinions from
suggestion,
others.
actually. Yeah,
嗯，
thank you so much. And
那
then, mhm.
我刚刚是跟老师说，因为台湾是佛教圣地，就是我们不管是日本的佛教禅宗的，或是南传的，然后大乘的、汉传的、中国西部的，其实我们都蛮熟悉。但是其实蒙古佛教我们很不熟悉，所以我个人是想建议老师说，可不可以在最后一堂课帮我们介绍一下蒙古佛教的特色啊，或是历史啊？我自己觉得这个题目很有趣，那大家也还是可以持续的建议。那我们会希望把大家想听的，在最后两堂课可以讲的，都请老师跟我们讲一讲。
Mhm. So we can go over this topic on the last day of class. Right? So
OK，
we can cover it. Just to have a heads up, um, the very term Mongolian Buddhism is also quite uh, controversial in a sense,
嗯
because some
嗯
people believe that there is an identity of Mongolian Buddhism, and others claim that the Mongolian Buddhism is just a part of Tibetan Buddhism, right?
嗯
And
嗯
then how we somehow, uh, define Tibetan Buddhism is another related question, and how Buddhism in Mongolia is related to this is another question. So this is kind of interesting topic.
yeah.
Scholars still don't have kind of a consensus idea. People have a debate, but we can
Mm,
actually go over, some of the concerns about Tibetan Mongolian Buddhism in the last day of class.
OK，那 so 好，老师是说 就是蒙古佛教这个主题是会很有趣。不过，就像他今天讲的，就是说蒙古佛教这个主题，大家可能也会觉得有一点点争议性。为什么呢？因为有一些人认为，哦，蒙古佛教是有它的特色的，可是另外一些人觉得，诶，蒙古佛教不过就是中国西部佛教的延伸，或者是就跟他们一样而已，没有什么自己的特色。所以很多学者也就这个部分在辩论，那目前是没有结论的，但是老师觉得可以跟我们讨论这个，他觉得应该是会蛮有趣的。
Mm. It may be just a political term,
嗯
because we have these nation states like Japan, Korea, and Mongolia, and China, etc. So that's why, because of this kind of the nation state idea that we kind of try to define Japanese Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, etc. Right? If there were no like such a distinctions, then probably we have only one idea, like East Asian Buddhism, right? So this is kind of
嗯
problematic concept anyway.
嗯。对啊，有人会说蒙古佛教，它就是蒙古佛教、日本佛教、韩国佛教这些，到底是不是因为我们有这么多的国家，所以我们非得要每一个国家的佛教，我们就要说那是一个佛教？如果我们没有国家，而是区域的话，会不会我们就统一说，OK，东亚佛教，东亚都是练习这个佛教？会不会有这样的可能性？也是有人这样说。
Okay, thank you so much, and then
OK，
good night,
谢谢
and
大
I'll see
家。
you next week.
Okay, thank you so much, Batra. I'm just going to promote JB's event in December, so please feel free to go and thank you for your teaching. OK，好，那 Batra 老师今天的课就到此为止，可是请大家给我1分钟，我要来那个工商一下哦。那有一些同学，应该很多同学都知道，可是有些同学可能还不知道，在12月，JB 老师要回来台湾了。那 JB 老师一直都很关心大家。然后这一次，我们也跟 JB 老师安排了很多很精彩的课程内容，在线下跟线上要呈现给大家哦。那目前呢，因为台北场已经爆满了，所以如果大家有兴趣的话呢，12月14号礼拜六的早上可以上线听 JB 爷爷讲戒律，可以了解戒律，它可能不是只有限制我们的行为或者是想法，而它是可以帮助到我们，可以保护到我们的，还像护身符一样。然后在高雄呢，我们在线下哦，这是 JB 老师他近年来都是在台北跟台中比较多哦，但是我这次就是特别跟老师说，老师你一定要去高雄，因为我希望南部的同学有机会可以亲自跟 JB 老师面对面，然后跟他学习。那大家都知道，就是台湾这几年又是有地震啊，又是有台风淹水，所以其实有不少的天然灾害。所以我就特别邀请 JB 老师，可以帮我们讲一讲这些天灾它背后的种子是什么。然后 JB 老师，因为他超会冥想的嘛，大家都知道他做过3年闭关，所以老师也会带我们大家一起冥想，然后并且把祝福送给这一些震区啦，或者是水灾的灾区的人们。啊，所以说欢迎大家报名，然后跟我们一起，就是跟这 b 老师学习，把握跟老师相处的时间。那再来就是12月18号，我们在线上晚上用1个小时的时间，老师要亲自跟大家报告 AL 今年一整年度所做的事情，所保存的经典如何运用大家的善款，所以这个也欢迎大家上线聆听。好喽，那我们把报名的这个连接啦，跟会议室啊，都放在我们的群组，大家可以把这个讯息截取下来，然后我们就下礼拜三再见喽。那听说又有一个台风要来，所以请大家就是要出入要保护自己希望大家都很平安。下礼拜三再一起回来上课，拜拜。